Hi there, welcome to Mr. Nowak's Classroom. We're recording this podcast on a gloomy Friday in Renfrew, Ontario. This podcast, as always, is brought to you by Try Hard Apparel. You can follow them at Twitter at Try Hard Apparel. Today we're going to break down yesterday's NFL draft, and I'm joined by Neil Gibbons. You can follow him at
Gibbons_Neil
on Twitter, and that's Gibbons is spelled as you think it would be spelled, and Neil is spelled E-A-L. Also joined by Jets fan Devin Cloutier. You can follow him on Twitter at Devin Cloutier. And finally, a late addition to the pod is Matt Murdoch, and you can follow him on Twitter at
Matt Murdoch 32.
That's good, Matt Murdoch 32. So let's just go around the circle here talking about your first impressions of the draft. We have very diverse tastes, but let's start with Neil. What are your first impressions and the legacy that the first round of 2014 will leave?
I thought it was pretty well as expected for the first two picks. However, I feel like the Jaguars kind of reached when they took Bortles at 3. I feel like he doesn't have enough around him to be good. I think that could possibly be, as you see 2 years ago when we saw the Andrew Luck RG3 picks, the high quarterbacks, and how they turned their teams around from very bad records to make it to the playoffs. But I think the difference is the Redskins and the Colts had pieces on the team that allowed them to be successful, as the Jags don't.
Do you think the fact that he came from a Florida school influenced that Jags pick?
It could make him more popular in the Jacksonville area, but I still don't think he will stay there long. I think he's going to be a good pick.
Rumors are still out there that Tebow is going to the Jags. How do you respond to that? Or do you think it's over for Tim Tebow?
I think Tebow, I don't think he has a future in the NFL.
Fair enough. Now, Devin, what were your first impressions?
It's defensive oriented, obviously, but a lot of teams I know had Sammy Watkins, who the Bills picked first overall, top of their list. But the Bills took him 4th. They traded up for him. I thought that was kind of a surprise. But again, I thought Clowney was a good first pick. And overall, I thought it was as expected, other than a lot of people thought Manziel would go a lot higher than he did.
Well, I think you're opening up a lot of conversations here. Let's talk about Clowney. Everyone's criticizing his motor or his love of the game. How do you respond to that, Matt?
What?
How do you respond, or anyone else can join in here, that the downfall on Clowney was that he doesn't have a high motor and he doesn't love football, but he's an athletic freak. So what do you see coming out of Clowney in the NFL?
I think you just have to get him on the right team, and I feel like Houston is a good team to be on. You have J.J. Watt, Brian Cushing. You have a strong defense there, and I feel like he's going to have a lot of motivation to do well there.
Now, the outcry from the Texans is like, okay, they're going to stop people. How are they going to score?
I think that question will be answered in the second round. I think they're going to draft a quarterback. They obviously have the first pick in the second round also, and there's still Derek Carr and Garoppolo, like mediocre quarterbacks that could step in and play a role.
And McCarron is still out there.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
All right. Okay, let's get back to Clowney. Do you think you'll have a good NFL career?
Of course. You never really see those kind of stats, except for like the rare players. Like Freeney had those, and he did wonderful. And then normally the blowouts or the burnouts are running backs or people that go to terrible franchises, like, for instance, Mac. I think that's a black hole where he went to. Like, he's not getting out of there. That'll be where his career pretty much dies.
At the Raiders. Well, that's interesting. And the Raiders have, they're still cursed with the, who was the quarterback that they picked, who's now over 300 pounds?
Jamarcus
Russell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't pan out. So you don't think that's a good fit for Mac?
No, I don't think so. They have been, all their picks have been busts in the last couple of years. I don't think it'll turn around.
Now, Neil, on your mock draft board, you did have Mac going first overall. What was the rationale behind that?
I feel like a number one pick should have no holes in it, kind of thing. Should be a sure thing. And when you look at Clowney, yes, he put up huge numbers at the combine, and he's an athletic freak, like once in a decade player. But when you have a player that doesn't really put up stats in their last year before they declare for the draft, that's kind of a flag to me. And I feel like Mac is almost as good of an athlete as him, and if you watch the film, he put up huge stats.
I guess the story of the first round, outside of the Clowney pick, was the fact that Manziel dropped so far. Matt, on your draft board, you had him as high as 4, and he drafted to 22. Drafted to Cleveland, where our good friend Bronson Kubaseski says that's where quarterbacks go and die. What is your response to Manziel? Is he an NFL quarterback? What will he do for Cleveland? Devin, you can start.
He definitely has the heart for it, but I don't know, like, his size might be an issue. They still don't have, like, I guess they have Josh Gordon to throw to still. But other than that, they don't have a line to protect him he can make his way out of the pocket, but staying in the pocket and being a passer like that, I don't think there's not going to be much opportunity for him there.
Will he start year one?
I think
they have to start him. That's their only chance, really. They do have some pretty good receivers, and after this draft, they definitely strengthen their team. But if they don't have Manziel starting, I think that's an issue for them.
Well, and as you said, they traded up. They traded with Buffalo, so they got Buffalo's first pick next year. So maybe this is the time that Cleveland kind of turns the corner. But I think they've got a long uphill climb. I'll talk about my Bills right now. As Devin talked about, I love their pick. It totally shocked me. And, you know, as a fringe NFL guy, you get excited when you get an offensive weapon in the draft and not an offensive tackle or defensive lineman. This was a pick with some pizzazz to it. Now, Chris Schultz on TSN this morning suggests that sometimes these players these wide receivers who are under 6 feet and are picked in the top 5 traditionally don't have a strong NFL career. But Sammy Watkins, to me, he could be that breakout player that the Bills need to balance their offense. Do a nice compliment to Stevie Jones. And you know what? I think the Bills' offense has the ability to really surprise some people. You got C.J. Spiller in the backfield. You've got Fred Jackson. You've got Scott Chandler coming out of the tight end. I think the Bills are poised to make a playoff run. Now, Neil, you'll disagree. Can you assess what your Baltimore Ravens did?
The Ravens, I don't know how to feel about their pick. I feel like they needed a safety more than a linebacker. A linebacker's not a huge deal. They just signed a veteran linebacker in Darryl Smith. They took a linebacker in second round last year in Arthur Brown, and they were going to try and mold him into a starter. But then you go out and take C.J. Mosley when you essentially have no free safety, and Calvin Pryor, a lot of people's top-rated safety, is there for the taking. And I guess you won't really know until they play. Mosley could have a huge impact, and it could be a good pick, but personally, I would have gone with Pryor.
Devin, you want to break down what the Jets did yesterday?
Yeah, like Neil mentioned, they took Calvin Pryor. I think it's a good fit. They have a strong run defense already, and this will just complement to their pass defense. Their offense is still looking pretty shaky. I'm not sure about Chris Johnson coming in. but he's definitely, I think he's a good fit come New York.
If they can pound the ball, you know, the Jets could be dangerous. It's going to be incredibly boring football, but it'll be hard-nosed football. Matt, now, of course, your Redskins, they traded away their pick in the RG3 deal. So what are you looking at for the 2014-2015 season out of the Redskins?
Just for RG3 to be healthy, they got bigger backs than rather than speed, so they can definitely ground and pound. And with RG3, they can get the speed run going. So it's a pretty big arsenal for offense. As long as he's healthy, they'll do well.
Now, do you think is Cousins going to stay as a backup, or do you see him moving on to greener pastures, if you will?
Only the game will tell, really. It's hard to say right now.
That's incredible insight. Now, looking at the rest of the draft, of the first round, do you see sleepers? Do you see steals? Do you see someone who's a great fit? Do you see a great fantasy player, you know, in that top 32? Neil, we'll start with you.
The biggest steal I see was Carolina, I believe at 28. They lost their 3 starting receivers. They lost Steve Smith, who's obviously a huge loss, to Baltimore. Brennan LaFell went to New England, and then they also lost Ted Ginn. And they went out and got Kelvin Benjamin. He's a huge receiver, ran a bit of a slow 40 time and a 4.6 for a receiver, but he makes up for it with size. And a lot of people had him going top 20. That's just, I think this draft is just loaded with receivers, and you're going to see a lot of them go late first round and early second. And I think that's a steal for him. Like, he's a huge weapon for Cam if he comes back healthy from ankle surgery, and that could help.
Okay, Devin, what sleeper, good fit, good fantasy player?
I think Ibram with the Lions will be a good fit for Matt Stafford to open it up for Calvin Johnson too, but he's got good size, 6'4", 250, and he'll be a breakout tight end for sure, top 5 in fantasy, I'd say.
And we can't forget that Golden Tate has gone to the Lions as well, so there are a few more targets, especially if they're going to double cover Calvin Johnson. Maybe at Detroit, and if Reggie Bush can stay healthy, maybe they're going to be a factor once again. Matt, what do you like?
I agree with Gibby. I like the Benjamin pick. I'm surprised he didn't get picked up earlier. That can really work the fade route, and he's a real red zone threat. And along with, generally you have to spy Cam Newton, so leaving that open, he can throw the ball a little bit more.
I really like the Brandon Cooks pickup from the Saints. Now, the Saints they lost Lance Moore. They lost Darren Sproles. So I think this is a nice fit. Yeah, he's undersized, but he was the quickest player in the draft. And with the offensive genius of Drew Brees, I think they're going to do some really fun things with this kid. And I think that was the story of the draft. I think it was really cool how Cooks, he won the Adidas $100,000 in the combine, used that money to buy his mom a car. So it's a good Mother's Day for the Cook family. All right, that's going to conclude our first sports-themed Mr. Nowak's Classroom. Please check out our sponsors, Try Hard Apparel. You can email the CEO, Austin Pierce, at tryhardapparel@live.ca. This week, we're looking forward to the Take It for Tom run, Calabogie, 8:30 Saturday morning. Registration opens. Looks like a good weekend, and we'll look to see you on iTunes very shortly. Thanks for listening. All the best.